Every generation of cinema has its icons, people who capture a moment in time so vividly that their names echo decades later. Bridgette Monet is one of those names. To some, she was the glamorous star of the 1980s adult film era, a mysterious woman who appeared suddenly, shined brilliantly, and then vanished just as quickly. To others, she represents a larger cultural story about freedom, rebellion, and the risks of stepping into the spotlight. But who was she really? Why did she leave the industry at the height of her fame? And what does her story tell us about the changing landscape of Hollywood and American culture? Tonight, we peel back the layers and uncover the untold life and legacy of Bridgette Monet. Bridgette Monet's story begins far from the flashing lights and cameras. Born in the 1950s in the United States, she grew up during a period of immense cultural transformation. The world she inherited as a child was one of optimism. Post-war America was booming, families were moving into suburban homes, and the ideal of the American dream was everywhere. Yet beneath that polished exterior, another America was emerging. A restless youth culture, questioning authority, experimenting with freedom, and pushing back against tradition. This environment shaped Bridgette's worldview. She wasn't raised in Hollywood, she was raised in the shifting tides of a society, rethinking everything from politics to personal freedom. Friends and those who crossed her path early on described her as confident, curious, and strikingly intelligent. She wasn't the type to follow the crowd blindly. Even in her youth, Bridgette displayed independence, an independence that would later define her career choices and set her apart from many others in her field. By the late 1970s, America was already deep into what is now referred to as the golden age of adult cinema. Films were no longer confined to hidden corners or underground theaters. They were crossing into mainstream conversations. Newspapers, talk shows, and even the New York Times were reviewing them as cultural phenomena. Bridgette Monet entered this world at exactly the right moment. With her dark hair, expressive eyes, and magnetic screen presence, she immediately stood out in an industry often overcrowded with performers. Her on-screen energy was different. Where many saw these films as simple performance work, Bridgette brought a level of charisma and artistry that was undeniable. She wasn't just appearing in films, she was commanding them. She quickly became one of the most recognizable names in the adult film industry, appearing in dozens of productions and becoming a regular feature in magazines and promotional materials. What set her apart was her ability to balance glamour with substance. Unlike some performers who became typecast or were viewed only as temporary stars, Bridgette built a brand around herself. She cultivated mystery, avoided the chaos of tabloids, and kept her personal life largely private. In doing so, she created an aura of sophistication that fans respected. Her fame also intersected with a period when adult entertainment was at the center of national debate. Politicians, journalists, and activists were battling over censorship and morality. Bridgette Monet's success in that moment made her a symbol both admired by audiences and scrutinized by critics. Despite her growing fame, Bridgette Monet maintained one of the rarest qualities in show business: privacy. She didn't chase interviews, she didn't seek unnecessary headlines, and she never allowed herself to become overexposed. This decision only deepened her appeal. Fans wanted to know more, but Bridgette gave them just enough to keep the mystery alive. Then came the turning point. Just as her career seemed unstoppable, Bridgette began stepping back. Fewer appearances, fewer roles, and eventually, her presence in the industry faded almost completely. This wasn't a slow decline or a dramatic downfall. It was a deliberate exit. Why? That remains one of the most fascinating parts of her story. Some speculate she became disillusioned with the business side of the industry, where exploitation and burnout were rampant. Others believe she had simply accomplished everything she wanted and chose to leave before the darker side of fame could consume her. Whatever the reason, Bridgette Monet's choice to walk away only strengthened her legend. To understand Bridgette Monet's legacy, you need to understand the time she lived in. The 1980s were an era when America was torn between conservatism and counterculture. President Ronald Reagan was leading a return to traditional values, while music, movies, and nightlife were celebrating excess, rebellion, and freedom. Bridgette's films weren't just entertainment, they were part of this clash. They represented freedom of expression, the right to explore taboo subjects, and the growing influence of women who were taking control of their own image. Historians today point out that performers like Bridgette were often more influential than they were given credit for. They weren't only acting in films, they were shaping conversations about gender, morality, and art. So, what happened to Bridgette Monet after she left the screen? The truth is, nobody knows for certain. Unlike other stars who transitioned into mainstream Hollywood, or those whose struggles were splashed across headlines, Bridgette disappeared quietly. Some reports suggest she turned to other creative pursuits, writing, photography, or even behind-the-scenes work. Others say she wanted the freedom of a private life, far removed from the chaos of the entertainment world. What we do know is that Bridgette Monet successfully avoided the tragic pitfalls that consumed so many of her peers. There were no public scandals, no sensational headlines, no downfall. In a sense, her decision to walk away might be the most powerful part of her story. She defined her career on her own terms, and she ended it the same way. Now here's where I'd love to hear from you. Bridgette Monet's decision to leave at her peak raises a fascinating question. When is the right moment to walk away from fame? Do you think stars are remembered more fondly when they leave on their own terms, or when they keep pushing until the world forgets them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading through them and pinning the most insightful ones. And while you're there, let me know, which other stars from the 70 seconds, 80 seconds, or 90 seconds do you want me to cover next? Your votes directly shape the next documentary on this channel. Today, Bridgette Monet stands as a reminder of a very specific moment in cultural history. For fans of the 1,980 seconds, she represents glamour, mystery, and independence. For younger audiences discovering her today, she represents a time when performers challenged censorship, pushed artistic boundaries, and helped open conversations that still continue. Her name continues to circulate among film historians, collectors, and fans because she managed something rare. She became iconic without being consumed by fame. Her story is as much about what she chose not to do as it is about what she achieved. Bridgette Monet's life and career remind us that legacy isn't just about fame or fortune, it's about choice. She captured the attention of audiences around the world, walked away at her peak, and left behind a story that still fascinates decades later. In an industry where so many struggled to control their narrative, Bridgette Monet wrote her own ending. And maybe that's the greatest lesson her life offers us. Sometimes, the most powerful act of all is knowing when to step away. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more deep dives into the icons of cinema, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
And let me know in the comments which other stars from the 1970s and 1980s do you want us to cover next?